Ever since we were younger, we were always told, stranger danger, stranger danger, stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers, don't trust strangers.
What do you want?
We all know that the people around us play a role in making us just feel good about life in general. But what about the people that we don't know personally? What about the people that we don't really pay attention to? What about the strangers? Today on LitePsych, we're going to find out why strangers are so important and how they affect our well-being. Hi everyone, I'm Jim and this is LitePsych, the latest psychology in simple terminology. When we talk about our social networks, we generally categorize people into two. We have strong ties or strong relationship, and these are our friends and families, and there are gajillion studies that talk about how good relationships with our strong relationships is good for us. But interestingly enough, our weak ties or our acquaintances, strangers, or just people you happen to sit in the same classroom with also have an effect on our well-being. These are the people that you don't emotionally connect with or aren't particularly invested in. But it is these same people that can bring a certain joy in our life when we click or when we vibe with them. Now this may all sound strange, but this experience is very familiar. When you're not at home or at work or at school and when you're in your favorite cafe, more likely than not, there are people there who are also frequent in that location. And in that sense, because of the place and how they study or how little they talk or how loud they talk or the people that they're with, they become a part of the atmosphere of that place. And through that, you kind of vibe. You get on the same vibe. And that brings you a certain joy, even if you may not know his or her name or what he or she is actually doing there. His or her presence, just being in that vicinity, just makes your day better. These people, whether you're in a French cafe or a Mexican restaurant or a Starbucks or a fast food chain, whether you talk directly or just by simply enjoying the vibe or the buzz or the presence of each other, though quite far away, actually helps our well-being. One theory that explains why our interactions with strangers are important and affect our well-being is the theory of mattering. And the theory of mattering basically is how we want to feel that we matter to other people. Because quite simply, it is only through connecting and being thought of by others that we feel significant. There are three components that makes us feel like we matter. The first is that we need to feel that others are aware of us, that they know we exist, that they recognize our presence and existence, and we are being acknowledged and attended to. Number two, we need to feel that we are important to others, and we feel this when they invest their time and attention and effort to us. Number three, we want to feel that other people rely on us, that we are needed. This last component emphasizes our need to give or to contribute something to other people and not only just receive and receive all the time. So now that we know that our weak relationships matter and that mattering is important to us, let's talk about the kinds of strangers that we run into in everyday life. Based on this study, there are two kinds of strangers. There's the good stranger and the bad stranger. The good stranger is friendly, vulnerable, a potential friend, and is interesting. We're going to take a look at these four characteristics and how they play into affecting our well-being. A friendly stranger is someone who's generally warm. It's the person you want to run into in the grocery because it just gives you a happy and comfortable feeling when they're around. We often attribute friendliness of a stranger by their smile.
Nice.
Smiling is generally viewed as a gesture that spreads joy. At the deeper levels, smiling signifies warmth and comfort and care coming from another person. Other small gestures like a door being held open or helping you pick up things that you dropped are gestures by strangers that makes us feel seen, recognized, noticed, and attended to, which makes us feel good. Being friendly is also associated to being polite and respectful. In fact, we even put more emphasis on being polite and respectful to strangers as opposed to our family. I never thought it was weird until I said that sentence.
I'm sorry, what?
And this really comes from a desire to put people at ease and to make people as comfortable as possible. The second characteristic that we refer to as strangers being good is when they're vulnerable. And you might be weirded out. Just listen to this. This is when strangers are put in a position of need, like if they drop something or they're hungry or they're clearly struggling. Because this puts us in a position to be needed. When we get the chance to be a good Samaritan, when we get the chance to be charitable and generous, it makes us feel like we're worth something in this world. If you haven't yet, it really feels good to help other people. Generally, people aren't obligated in any way to help you, especially people who don't know you. That's why it's all that much better and all that much sweeter when someone who you don't know actually reaches out and helps you out. A good stranger is also someone who can be your friend. I mean, if you think about it, at some point all our friends were strangers. And some people say that strangers are just friends you haven't met yet. I think that's cute. Meeting someone for the first time is something that can be enjoyable because of the spontaneity and just randomness and eventual pleasure and joy that we get out of it. And we usually move from strangers to close ties or close relationships to a lot of conversations. Lastly, a good stranger is someone that is interesting. For example, someone from a different culture, someone who speaks a different language, someone who comes from a different universe, figuratively. Like if he or she were an athlete and you're a celebrity.
What are you doing here?
Just a clash of worlds, bringing about novelty and just something fresh and new into your life. It becomes a very enriching experience as you come into contact with something new, something that you don't always run into, something that you're not used to. So those are the personal factors that affect how we see strangers as good, but there are also bigger factors surrounding that. Number one is the place. The place where we meet strangers greatly affect how we view them. For example, while watching your favorite basketball team, Go Thunder, or your favorite football team, Go Seahawks, American football, or your favorite football team, Go Manchester United, there's a shared goal or shared trait you have by running to strangers in that arena that you all support that team. So this automatically creates a sense of camaraderie and community with those strangers. When your team's winning, you're all cheering, shouting. When your team's losing, you're all seated down and slumped. And even if you're losing, the shared experience of losing together still makes that experience quite significant. The second factor is time, or like the context by which when you meet strangers. So meeting strangers on a holiday puts you in a better disposition when talking to them or when viewing them. Or if you're in a club and have decided to meet tonight about socializing and making friends. It paves the way for you to spend more time to talking with strangers. Technology is also something that allows us to communicate and interact with people who are very similar to us, especially with the different filters in the news feeds and the hashtags in social media. This allows us to meet with people with similar interests without necessarily have to meet up in person, and we can forget about logistical problems. However, nothing beats a face-to-face interaction, while there is still space for virtual and online interactions. Let's talk about them bad strangers.
That's a lie! Don't give me that!
It says in Mexico. We're not in Mexico. We're in America.
I have seen you around this neighborhood too many times. pictures, I didn't touch you. If you want to take pictures, you have to be on the side of the road.
Generally, when we talk about bad strangers, we consider them to be dangerous and to be rude. Ever since we were younger, we were always told, stranger danger, stranger danger, stranger danger. Don't talk to strangers, don't trust strangers. At least on the study, this is how they view bad strangers. Physical appearance plays an important role in judging if a stranger is good or bad. And while we should never judge a book by its cover, clothes, hygiene, sometimes even hair plays a role in seeing if a person is good or bad, or even how dangerous they look. We see bad strangers as someone that can potentially cause you harm, hurt you. We're also very wary of strangers lingering in public spaces, especially at night. Street sides, street corners, dark alleys, and public places like that. We're also very sensitive to how they walk. If they're walking too slow, we keep looking back. If they walk too fast, we also feel like they're chasing us. These are some of the things that run through our head when we judge strangers to be bad.
Clearly that's me.
Youths or the younguns who are, shall we say, perceived to be antisocial or at least quite reckless in behavior or do things like smoking, drinking too much alcohol, doing drugs, etc. out in public also plays into this bad stranger idea. Funnily enough, being too friendly can also be seen as a warning sign of a dangerous stranger. And when we're confronted with people of the descriptions that I just mentioned, people tend to keep conversations short, avoid eye contact, just avoid them in general, and try to have as little interaction and be as close up, figuratively and sometimes literally, as possible. Then there are the rude strangers, and these are the people that you just don't want to meet and just don't want to interact with at all because you think they're inconsiderate and selfish. And unlike the dangerous stranger, where a lot of it is honestly just in our head, rude strangers are very much more explicit about their behaviors, their thoughts, their words. So you have proof that they are rude, as opposed to dangerous ones where sometimes it really is just pure imagination. And instead of fear when confronted with rude strangers, we're really more annoyed and angry because they're the people who push around other people when they're in a rush and they just have no regard for anyone else with whatever they're doing. Rude strangers also seem to be very impatient and are the people who get easily annoyed. They give you sharp stares and sighs when they're not getting what they want or things are taking too long, and these are behaviors that cause a lot of road rage, for example. Much like the good stranger, place, time, and technology also plays into how we see the bad stranger. For public spaces like streets, especially at night, are associated with dangerous strangers, while very busy, crowded, stressful places are associated with rude strangers. Maybe a train station or just general walkways where they don't want to be there, but they have to be there. So that's why they're all being rude about them. Heavy use of technology is also associated with bad strangers because they use technology to seem too busy to care about anything else, and an excessive use of technology is often associated with the youth, and they're way too preoccupied with their own lives to notice anything and everything else that's happening around them. Lastly, when it comes to time, it's more of a contextual thing. We just feel that we're better off spending our time elsewhere. We all know that spending our time with strangers or people in general is an investment, but there's this constant need of catching up to deadlines, catching up to events, catching up to goals and tasks that we feel like sometimes it's just better not to interact with anyone and just do what we have to do. So now that we've talked about the good and bad strangers, what am I supposed to get out of this?
Listen up.
This study paints a picture on how even our weak relationships or weak ties play a role into our well-being. And while we want to matter, we have to remember that people also have the same expectation, that they also want to be seen and recognized. They also want to feel like they are important. They also want to feel like they are relied on, etc. That as much as we want to be smiled at, there's an equal burden and encouragement for you to smile at others. That while we do crave receiving attention, feeling like we matter, it wouldn't kill us to give that same thing, those same things to other people. What the takeaway here is our desire to matter to all our relationships, something that's universal, that even with strangers, it still remains true. Comment down below any questions you might have, and feel free to leave any psychology topics, studies, and personal questions you want us to look into. Follow us at LitePsych on Instagram so you never miss out on the latest psychology in simple terminology. Again, this is Jim. I'm aware you exist. You are important. And I need you. And I hope we can reflect that same thinking and behavior to others. Let's make the world a better place. Yes, even for the people we just run into out in the streets. This is LitePsych. Thank you, and we'll see you again.